Good morning, and thank you for the introduction. I have nothing to disclose, and my co-authors have nothing to disclose either that's relevant to the study. So the proportion of women surgeons has actually doubled in the last 2 decades, and there's been a recognized gender imbalance in academic medicine, with women being underrepresented in leadership positions in academia. And a recent study demonstrated that although women represent about 38% of general surgery trainees, they only represent 10% of full professors. And at the rate this is going, it would take about 121 years to reach gender equality in full professorship. Different avenues are actually known to lead to leadership position in surgery, so it could either be being the chair or a chief of a division, but it could also be through national societies, such as this one. So physician-supported specialty societies actually play a significant role in career advancement as they provide critical resources, networking, and publishing opportunities. Speaking invitations in particular at these conferences are often used by faculty promotion and tenure committees as evidence of external recognition and visibility on a national or international platform. So these can be critical to academic and professional advancement. Women have been recognized as being underrepresented as speakers at different conferences, not only in medicine or surgery, but also in other professions such as mathematics or biology. And having women conveners involved in speaker selection has actually been shown to increase the proportion of women speakers. And in 2018, at the SAGES meeting, there was actually significant effort to increase the proportion of women chairs and co-chairs. So our research question was, to what extent is the gender of panel conveners associated with the gender distribution of invited speakers at SAGES? To answer that question, we performed a retrospective audit of annual SAGES meeting programs from 2009 to 2018. And we included all invited speakers, which we defined as faculty that delivered a prepared oral presentation in a session under the organization of 1 or more chairs. And we excluded the following sessions. We determined the gender of speakers, panel conveners, and overall members at each meeting using data provided by SAGES, and when that wasn't possible, using an internet search. And we defined all male panels as panels with male-only invited speakers, and all male convener sessions, sessions with no women chairs or co-chairs. And we assessed the trend in the proportion of speakers and conveners by gender over time. We performed the usual statistical analysis, and we used a Kendall-Tau test to test the trend over time. So of the 459 panels identified, after applying exclusion criteria, we kept 402 panels. And of these, 41% were all male speaker panels, and 59% had at least one woman speaker on them. Overall, we had 2,836 speakers, and of these, 15% were women. When we looked at the trend in the proportion of women overall members and speakers over time, so you can see on the x-axis the year, and on the y-axis the proportion. In the solid red line, we noted that the proportion of women speakers increased over time, up to 19% in 2018. And in the dashed line, you see the trend in the overall women members, and we see that this rise was parallel to overall speakers. We then looked at the overall number of panel speakers by gender. So you can see again on the x-axis the year, and on the y-axis it's the number of speakers. In red, the women, in blue, the men. And we can see that the actual number of women speakers has increased over time, and so has the number of men speakers. And in 2018, there were actually over 450 speakers at the meeting. When we looked at the proportion of panels with all male speakers, we noted this significantly decreased over time, from 50% in 2009 to 31% in 2018. And of note, there were actually no all-women speaker panels over this last decade. Looking at the number of session conveners, so this is combining all chairs and co-chairs for the sessions. Again, we noted there was increased number of women conveners over time, as well as an increased number of men conveners over time. And of all the conveners sessions, there were 66% of sessions that had all male conveners on them. Looking again, from a different perspective at the proportion of sessions with at least one woman convener on them, we noted that this increased from 12% to 58% in 2018. And this really echoes the efforts by SAGES that was made in 2018 to improve the gender balance in chairs and co-chairs at the meeting. When we looked at the proportion of women speakers by gender of the panel conveners, we actually noted that sessions with all male conveners on the left had 10% women speakers, whereas sessions with at least one woman convener had 24% women speakers. When we looked at the proportion of all-male panels, again, we noted that all-male convener sessions had 52% sessions with all-male panels, and sessions with at least one woman convener had only 19% of all male speaker panels. Finally, we decided to see if there was a correlation between the proportion of women conveners and the proportion of women speakers. So you see on the x-axis, the proportion of women conveners at a yearly meeting, and on the y-axis is the proportion of women speakers at a yearly meeting, and each dot represents an annual meeting. And we actually noted that as the proportion of women conveners increased, so did the proportion of women speakers, and this was significantly, statistically significant. However, the proportion of women speakers overall at a meeting did not reach 25%. So in summary, the proportion of women invited speakers in session with at least one woman speaker has significantly increased over time, and so has the number of women and men speakers over time. The proportion of women speakers, however, remains relatively low when we compare this to the proportion of women general surgeons that are entering practice. And sessions with all-male conveners were more likely to convene an all-male speaker panel. Finally, having at least one woman convener significantly increased the proportion of women speakers. So we conclude that including at least a woman chair or co-chair on a panel can be and is a successful strategy to improve gender balance in conference planning. Thank you very much, and I'll be very happy to take any questions.